The worst mistakes never feel dangerous at first. They feel ordinary. Emma Collins would remember that thought for the rest of her life, because at 11:47 that rainy night, all she believed she was doing was carrying a silver tray of black coffee down the wrong hallway. The Grand Aurelia Hotel was the kind of place where silence felt expensive. Marble floors reflected the cold gold lights above. Rain crawled down the glass walls of the 42nd floor, turning the city beyond into a blur of headlights, dark rooftops, and trembling neon. Emma moved carefully, one hand steadying the tray, the other gripping the small paper note the night manager had shoved at her 5 minutes earlier. VIP conference room. End of the East Hall. No questions. No eye contact. Leave the coffee and go. She was used to strange orders from rich guests. Men in tailored suits who never said thank you. Women dripping diamonds who looked through her like she was part of the furniture. Emma had learned to keep her head down, smile politely, and survive one shift at a time. Her younger brother Noah had surgery scheduled in 6 days, and every hour she worked meant another small piece of the hospital bill paid. That was all that mattered. But tonight, the east hallway was darker than usual. One of the signs near the elevators had been turned slightly, its brass arrow pointing toward a narrow private corridor she had never entered before. Emma hesitated. The hotel was too quiet. No music from the bar below. No distant laughter from drunk guests. Only rain, the soft buzz of security lights, and her own shoes tapping against polished stone. At the last door, she saw no room number, only a black card reader and a silver handle. The note in her hand trembled from the air conditioning. She knocked once. No answer. She pushed the door open with her elbow and stepped into a room that was not waiting for coffee. 12 men in dark suits sat around a long black table. No one spoke. No one moved. At the head of the table sat Vincent Blackwell. Emma knew his name because everyone in the city knew his name, even if they pretended they did not. He was taller than the rumors, broader than the shadows behind him, dressed in a charcoal suit with a white shirt open at the collar and a watch that caught the light like a warning. His face was calm, almost beautiful in a severe, dangerous way, but his eyes were cold enough to stop her breathing. On the table in front of him were photographs, bank statements, hospital records, and one file lying open beneath the yellow light. Emma's gaze fell before she could stop herself. Patient name, Noah Collins. Her brother. The tray tilted. One porcelain cup rattled. Every man in the room turned toward her. Emma froze in the doorway, rain whispering against the glass behind Vincent like 1,000 secrets. A guard near the wall reached inside his jacket. Vincent lifted one hand, and the man stopped instantly. Then Vincent Blackwell looked directly at Emma, slowly smiled, stood up from the head of the table, and walked toward her. He did not ask who she was. He did not ask what she had heard. He simply reached past her shoulder, closed the door with a soft click, and locked it. The sound of the lock was soft, but it changed the room more than a gunshot could have. Emma Collins stood with the silver tray trembling in her hands, every porcelain cup rattling like it had its own heartbeat. Behind her, Vincent Blackwell's shadow fell across the door, tall and still, cutting off the only exit. No one in the room spoke. 12 men watched her as if she had stepped into a place where ordinary people were not supposed to breathe. Emma could feel the rain moving down the glass walls, the city lights shaking beyond Vincent's shoulder, but inside the room everything had gone dangerously quiet. Vincent turned from the locked door and looked at her name tag. Emma Collins, he said, as if he had known the name before she entered. Her throat tightened. She wanted to explain, to apologize, to pretend she had seen nothing, but her eyes betrayed her. They had already found the file on the table. Noah Collins. Her little brother's name, printed beneath a hospital logo, surrounded by bank transfers and photographs of men she had never met. One of the suited men near the table pushed back his chair. Boss, she saw the file. Another man added, she heard enough. Emma's fingers tightened around the tray. I heard men talking in a room I wasn't supposed to enter, she said, forcing her voice not to break. I don't know who you are. I don't want to know. Vincent's expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened. He walked toward her slowly, not like a man in a hurry, not like a man who needed to prove power. He already owned the room. Every step made the silence heavier. Emma stood her ground, even when every instinct begged her to move back. Vincent stopped close enough that she could see the rain reflected in his cold eyes. "That would be easier to believe," he said quietly, "if your brother's name wasn't on my table." The words struck harder than any threat. Emma looked past him, at the file again. "Then tell me why it is." A faint shift moved through the men around the table. Surprise. Annoyance. Maybe even amusement that a waitress in a black uniform had dared to question Vincent Blackwell inside his own private meeting. But Emma did not lower her eyes. Fear sat inside her chest like ice, but beneath it was something stronger. Noah was all she had left. If his name was in this room, then running would not save him. Vincent studied her for a long moment. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know my brother's name doesn't belong with men who lock doors behind women." For the first time, Vincent's smile disappeared. The room seemed to inhale. One of his men reached toward Emma's tray, perhaps to take it, perhaps to take her phone, but Vincent's hand moved first. He did not touch Emma. He simply blocked the man with 2 fingers against his wrist. "No one touches her," Vincent said. His voice was calm, but the warning inside it made the man step back immediately. Emma's breath caught. She did not understand him. He had locked her in, yet he was the only reason no one had laid a hand on her. Vincent looked over his shoulder at the file, then back at her. "You didn't walk into this room by accident." Emma's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Before he could answer, every screen on the wall flickered. A security feed appeared, the hallway outside the conference room, empty except for a man in a hotel staff jacket standing near the elevator. He was not looking for a room. He was looking at Emma's picture on his phone. Vincent's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Then he turned back to her and said, "It means someone wanted you inside this room tonight." Emma Collins did not know what frightened her more, the man watching her from 3 feet away, or the fact that everyone else in the room seemed frightened of him too. Vincent Blackwell stood between her and the locked door, his body calm, his face unreadable, while the security feed on the wall showed the stranger outside still holding her photograph. The image was grainy, washed in blue hallway light, but Emma recognized the hotel staff jacket immediately. It belonged to no one from the night shift. "Who is he?" she asked. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Vincent did not answer at once. He turned slightly toward one of his men. "Find out who gave him access to this floor." The man moved immediately, speaking into an earpiece. Emma's pulse hammered so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She wanted to run to the hospital. She wanted to call Noah. She wanted to tear the file from the table and demand why her brother's life had become a line in a mafia meeting. But she knew panic would only make her smaller in a room full of men used to fear. So she carefully placed the coffee tray on the nearest side table. 1 cup had spilled onto the silver rim, dark liquid spreading like ink. "I need to call the hospital," she said. Vincent's cold eyes returned to her. "No," the word was quiet, absolute. Emma lifted her chin. "My brother is scheduled for surgery in 6 days. If some man outside this room has my picture and my brother's name is in your file, then I am calling the hospital." A murmur passed around the table. Someone gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Vincent did not. He simply watched her, as if she had become more dangerous by refusing to collapse. "You don't give orders here, Emma." "Then stop putting my family on your table." Silence fell so sharply it felt physical. Vincent's jaw tightened, but there was no anger in his eyes now. Something else moved there, something older, buried beneath years of control. He stepped closer, and Emma forced herself not to step back. He smelled faintly of rain, expensive cologne, and cold air. "Most people beg when they realize where they are," he said. "I'm not most people." "No," he said slowly. "You're not." Emma reached into the pocket of her black waitress apron for her phone. 2 men shifted instantly. Vincent raised one hand, and they froze. "Let her call," he said. Emma looked at him, startled despite herself. He took her phone from her palm, but not roughly. His fingers brushed the edge of hers for less than a second, and the contact felt strangely deliberate, controlled, almost careful. He dialed the hospital on speaker and placed the phone on the table between them. Emma asked for Noah's ward. Her voice nearly broke when the nurse confirmed he was asleep, stable, untouched. Only then did Emma breathe again. Vincent watched that breath leave her body, and for the first time that night, his expression changed. Not soft, never soft, but attentive, as if her fear for someone else had reached a locked room inside him. As Emma picked up her phone, something slipped from her apron pocket and fell near Vincent's shoe. a small white handkerchief, old and neatly folded, with the letter C embroidered in pale blue thread. Vincent looked down. The entire room seemed to vanish from his face. Emma bent to take it, but he moved first, lifting it from the floor with a care that made no sense for a man like him. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice lower than before. Emma frowned. "It was my mother's." Vincent stared at the embroidered letter as if it had pulled him years into the past. Rain struck the glass behind him. The security screen flickered. And then Emma saw something impossible in Vincent Blackwell's eyes. Not weakness, not kindness, but recognition. "Your mother," he said quietly, "saved my life once." For one breath. Vincent Blackwell looked less like the man who controlled the room and more like a man who had been dragged backward into a memory he never allowed anyone to touch. The handkerchief lay across his palm, small and faded, impossibly fragile against his broad fingers. Emma watched him stare at the pale blue letter C, and the fear inside her shifted into confusion. "My mother died 12 years ago," she said quietly. Vincent's eyes lifted to hers. "I know." The answer was too fast, too certain, and it made the air leave her lungs. Around the table, the men exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared interrupt. Emma took one step toward him. "Why do you know that?" Vincent folded the handkerchief once, carefully, then held it out to her, as if returning something sacred. "Because Catherine Collins pulled me out of the rain the night men came to kill me." Emma's fingers closed around the cloth, but his words felt impossible. Her mother had been a night nurse, gentle, exhausted, always smelling faintly of antiseptic and lavender soap. She had never spoken of mafia bosses or blood debts or dangerous men in dark suits. "She saved a stranger," Vincent continued, his voice controlled again, but lower. "She didn't ask my name until after she stopped the bleeding." Emma stared at him. The locked door, Noah's file, the stranger outside, the room full of silent men, it all seemed to tilt around her. "And now my brother's name is in your meeting because of that?" Vincent's expression hardened. "Your brother's name is in my meeting because someone found out what your mother did." A cold wave moved through Emma. On the wall, the security feed flickered again. The man in the fake hotel jacket was no longer alone. Two more figures had appeared near the elevator, both facing the conference room with the stillness of people waiting for an order. Vincent saw them, and something in him became completely still. Not frightened, not surprised. "Deadly. Lock down the floor," he said. One of his men immediately spoke into his earpiece. "Shut off public elevators. Kill access to the east stairwell. Bring the private car to service level 3. Emma turned toward the screen, then back to Vincent. "You locked the door because of them." Vincent did not deny it. "I locked the door because the moment you stepped inside, everyone outside knew where you were." The truth landed harder than the fear. She had thought the danger was in the room. She had thought Vincent was the threat. But now he stood between her and the door like a wall built out of silence and control. One of the men at the table rose. "Boss, we should move her now." Another said, "She knows too much." Vincent's eyes never left Emma. "She knows less than the person who sent her here." Emma's hands tightened around the handkerchief. "Sent me?" Vincent reached past her and opened a hidden panel beside the door. A private hallway glowed beyond it, narrow and dim, lit by emergency strips along the floor. The wrong sign near the elevator. The fake staff jacket. Your brother's file left open where you would see it. His voice lowered. "You were placed in my path tonight." Emma felt suddenly exposed, as if invisible strings had been tied around her life long before she entered this room. Vincent stepped into the private hallway first, then looked back. He did not offer comfort. He offered movement. "Stay close to me." She hated that part of her wanted to obey. She hated more that staying near him felt safer than staying away. As Emma followed him through the hidden corridor, the conference room door began to close behind them. In the narrowing gap, she saw one of Vincent's own men still seated at the table, his phone hidden beneath his hand, screen glowing. A message flashed before the door shut completely. The girl heard everything. The private corridor emptied them into a service elevator that smelled faintly of metal, rain-soaked coats, and hotel detergent. Emma stood in the corner with her mother's handkerchief clenched inside her fist, watching Vincent Blackwell through the reflection on the elevator doors. He did not look at her directly, but every part of him seemed aware of her breathing, her silence, the way she kept glancing at the emergency button as if she might still run. Two of his men stood in front of the doors. Another spoke quietly into an earpiece. Vincent remained beside her, tall and still, his dark coat brushing the sleeve of her waitress uniform whenever the elevator shifted. "Who was the man at the table?" Emma asked suddenly. Vincent's eyes lifted in the reflection. "Which one?" "The one with the phone." For the first time since they left the conference room, the silence around him changed. Sharper. Colder. "You saw that?" "I saw the message." Emma swallowed. The girl heard everything. One of the guards turned his head. Vincent did not. He only stared at the silver elevator doors as the numbers dropped floor by floor. "Then you saw more than you should have." Emma let out a small, humorless breath. "That seems to be the theme of my night." Something almost like a smile moved across Vincent's mouth, but it vanished before it became human. The elevator opened onto a private loading level where a black car waited with its engine running. Rain blew in from the open garage, silver under the harsh lights. Vincent guided her toward the car without touching her, yet somehow every man around them moved, as if an invisible line had been drawn around her body. No one stepped too close. No one reached for her. When Emma slid into the back seat, Vincent got in beside her. The drive to her apartment passed through a city washed in rain and neon. Emma kept her face turned toward the window, watching restaurants close, taxis slide through puddles, strangers hurry under umbrellas. She should have felt relieved to be out of that room. Instead, danger seemed to have followed her into every reflection. "Why did my mother never tell me about you?" she asked. Vincent's answer came after a long pause. "Because good people often bury the things they survive." Emma looked at him then. His face was unreadable, carved from shadow and passing streetlight. "Was she afraid of you?" "No," his voice lowered. "That was what made her brave." The words hit Emma where she was not prepared to be touched. She looked away quickly. When the car stopped outside her small apartment building, Vincent stepped out first, scanning the wet street, the broken porch light, the narrow alley beside the laundromat. Emma opened her door before he could. "I can walk myself upstairs." "I know." "Then don't follow me." Vincent looked at her through the rain, cold and controlled, but not offended. "I won't." She expected him to argue, command, insist. He did none of those things. He only stood beside the black car while she crossed the sidewalk, unlocked the front door, and climbed the stairs without looking back. But from her third-floor window, Emma saw him still there in the rain, hands in his coat pockets, face lifted toward her building like a man guarding a place he had no right to enter. Only after her light turned on did his car leave. By morning, Emma convinced herself the night had been a nightmare made of marble, locked doors, and a man with cold eyes. Then she reached the hospital billing desk and learned Noah's entire surgery balance had been paid before sunrise. No name, no note, just a transfer large enough to erase years of debt. Emma's anger rose faster than her relief. She turned from the desk, ready to find Vincent and throw his silent charity back in his face. But before she reached Noah's ward, a nurse stopped her with a nervous expression. "Miss Collins," she whispered, "a man came by earlier asking about your brother's surgery time." Emma went still. "What man?" The nurse glanced toward the end of the hallway. "He said he was family." Emma's blood ran cold as she followed her gaze. At the far exit, a hotel staff jacket disappeared around the corner. Emma did not chase the man in the fake hotel jacket. Every instinct told her to run after him, to grab his sleeve, to demand why he knew Noah's surgery time. But one glance through the hospital glass stopped her. Her brother lay asleep behind the ward window, pale under the soft white lights, a breathing tube taped gently beneath his nose. If Emma left him for even a second, fear might make her reckless. So she did the one thing she had learned from years of being ignored by people more powerful than her. She stayed calm long enough to think. By noon, she had folded the hospital receipt into a plain envelope, written Vincent Blackwell's name across the front, and taken a taxi to the tallest black building downtown. Blackwell Tower rose over the city like a warning made of glass and steel. Rain still hung over the streets, turning the windows into dark mirrors. The lobby was silent, polished, guarded by men who looked at Emma's waitress uniform as if she had walked into the wrong life. Maybe she had. But when she placed the envelope on the front desk and said, "Tell Mr. Blackwell Emma Collins is here," the guard's expression changed instantly. 5 minutes later, she was standing in a private elevator that climbed too fast, holding the envelope against her chest like a shield. Vincent's office occupied the top floor. It was enormous, dim, and beautiful in a way that felt cold rather than welcoming. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city beneath them, helpless and glittering. Vincent stood behind a black desk, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his dark suit jacket hanging over a chair, his face unreadable. He did not seem surprised to see her. That annoyed her more than it should have. Emma crossed the room and placed the envelope on his desk. "Take it back." Vincent glanced at it. "No, you don't get to erase my brother's surgery bill and pretend that makes you decent." His eyes sharpened. "I never pretended to be decent." "Then stop pretending this is protection when you won't tell me the truth." The silence after her words was heavy enough to press against the glass. Vincent walked around the desk slowly, stopping several feet from her, close enough for his presence to disturb her breathing, far enough not to trap her. "You should not have come here." Emma gave a bitter laugh. "Your world walked into my brother's hospital room this morning wearing a fake uniform. Don't tell me where I should be." For the first time, Vincent looked away. Only for a second, but she saw it. A crack in the control. "The man asking about Noah works for someone who used to serve my family," he said. "Someone who believes your mother cost him everything the night she saved me." Emma's fingers went cold. "My mother was a nurse. She was a woman who chose to help a dying stranger in the rain," Vincent said. "That choice made enemies she never knew existed." Emma's anger faltered, replaced by something worse. "So Noah is being punished because she saved you?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Noah is being used to reach me." The room seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She wanted to hate him. It would have been easier if he had been only the monster people whispered about. But the man in front of her looked at her brother's name like it was a wound he refused to touch. "Then what am I?" she asked softly. "Collateral?" Vincent's eyes returned to hers, colder than before because something beneath them was not cold at all. "No," he said. "You are the mistake they made when they thought I would not care." Emma stopped breathing. Outside the office, thunder rolled over the city. Then Vincent's phone lit up on the desk. A photo appeared on the screen, Noah's hospital room door, taken from the hallway, with a single message underneath. "Bring her to me, or the boy wakes up without a future." Vincent Blackwell did not move for several seconds after the message appeared, and that stillness terrified Emma more than rage would have. The photo of Noah's hospital door glowed on his phone like a wound. "Bring her to me, or the boy wakes up without a future." Emma's first instinct was to grab the phone, to call the hospital, to run back to Noah with her own body as the only shield she had. But Vincent was already turning away, his voice low and lethal as he spoke into another phone. "Secure the pediatric surgical wing. No uniforms without verification. No visitors. No exceptions." He paused, listening, then added, "If anyone gets within 20 feet of Noah Collins without my approval, remove them." Emma stared at him. "You don't get to make my brother a prisoner." Vincent turned back to her, cold eyes sharp. "I am keeping him alive." "And what about me?" she asked. "Are you going to lock me somewhere too?" The office went silent. Outside the windows, the storm pressed against the glass, turning the city below into a blur of silver streets and red taillights. Vincent stepped closer, but stopped before he crowded her. "If I wanted to lock you away, Emma, you would already be gone." The quiet honesty in his voice unsettled her more than a threat. He was not gentle. He was not safe. But every dangerous thing in him seemed pointed outward now, away from her. Emma hated how much that mattered. "He said to bring me," she whispered. "Then I'll go." Vincent's jaw hardened. "No, Noah is my brother. And you are exactly what they want. I am not a package you can hide in one of your black cars." Her voice shook, but she did not lower it. "I have spent years being ignored, overworked, underpaid, and talked over by people who think I am too small to matter. I will not let you decide my life just because you are louder, richer, and more dangerous than everyone else." Something flashed in Vincent's eyes. Not anger. Respect, though he looked almost offended by it. "You think I don't know you matter?" he asked quietly. Emma's breath caught. Before she could answer, he looked away and gave another order. "Put 2 men at the diner. Unmarked. No contact unless there is a threat." Emma frowned. "The diner. You work tonight." "How do you know that?" "I know everything that keeps you vulnerable." The words should have sounded controlling. Instead, they sounded like a confession he did not know how to soften. Emma took a step back. "I'm going to work." Vincent's eyes returned to her. "That is not wise." Neither was walking into your meeting, but apparently someone arranged that for me. She picked up the envelope from his desk and pushed it toward him again. Keep your money. If you want to protect Noah, protect him. But don't buy my silence, and don't buy my gratitude. Vincent looked at the envelope, then at her. I didn't pay the bill for gratitude. Then why? His answer came after a long silence. Because your mother saved me when she had every reason to walk away. And because last night, when every man in that room looked at you like a problem, you looked back like a person. Emma had no defense against that, so she turned and left before her face could betray her. That night, she worked the late shift at Miller's Diner with rain tapping against the windows and fear sitting under her ribs. The place smelled of coffee, fried onions, and wet coats. At 1:13 a.m., Vincent Blackwell walked in wearing a dark coat and sat in the farthest booth. He ordered black coffee and never drank it. He did not speak to her. He did not interfere. He only watched the door every time it opened. Emma pretended not to notice, but when a drunk customer grabbed her wrist near table 6, Vincent was beside them before she could blink. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the man until the hand released her. Apologize, Vincent said. The man did. Emma's wrist still tingled when Vincent stepped back, giving her space as if he understood she needed it. For the rest of the night, he remained in the booth, silent and dangerous, a shadow pretending not to protect her. But when Emma finished her shift and walked into the wet parking lot, she found something tucked beneath the windshield wiper of her old car, a photograph of her and Noah leaving the hospital, circled in red ink. On the back, one sentence was written, "He can guard the boy, but who guards you?" Emma stood in the rain with the photograph trembling between her fingers, the red circle around her, and Noah bleeding slightly under the water. For a moment, the diner parking lot seemed too bright, too empty, too silent. The neon sign buzzed above her old car. Puddles reflected the gray sky before dawn. Behind her, the diner door opened, and Vincent Blackwell stepped outside. He did not ask what was wrong. His eyes went straight to the photograph in her hand, and the air around him changed. Cold, controlled, terrifyingly still. Emma turned toward him, anger and fear twisting together in her chest. How did they get this close? Vincent took the photo, read the message on the back, and his jaw tightened. Because someone inside my circle is telling them where to look. She stared at him. Then why am I safer near you? The question landed between them harder than she expected. Vincent looked at her through the rain, his black coat darkening at the shoulders, his face carved in shadow and neon. Because the traitor can only reach what I allow him to see. Then stop allowing him to see me. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she hated herself for it. Vincent's expression shifted, almost invisibly, as if the sound had entered somewhere beneath his armor. He stepped closer, then stopped, giving her the space she had been demanding since the beginning. I'm trying. No, Emma whispered. You're reacting. You're standing in corners, paying bills, sending guards, watching doors. But you still haven't told me why they wanted me in that meeting. Vincent looked past her toward the street. A black car idled at the edge of the lot, one of his men inside, waiting. For the first time, Emma realized Vincent was not only protecting her from enemies. He was protecting her from the truth. The sign at the hotel wasn't moved by a stranger, he said at last. It was moved by Adrian Vale. Emma remembered the man at the conference table, the quiet one with the phone hidden beneath his hand. One of yours. He was. Vincent's voice went flat. He knew your mother's name. He knew what she did for me. He knew if he put you in front of me with Noah's file open, I would not treat you like an ordinary witness. Emma's heart began to pound. Why? Vincent's eyes returned to hers. Rain slid down his face, but he did not seem to feel it. Because he wanted proof. Proof of what? That you mattered. The words silenced her. Suddenly, every locked door, every camera feed, every hospital threat, every man watching her from the edges of her life became part of a single design. She had not stumbled into Vincent's world. She had been placed there like a match near gasoline. Emma stepped back until her shoulder brushed the cold side of her car. So I'm bait. Vincent's mouth tightened. You were supposed to be. And now? He looked at her for a long moment, and the dangerous calm in his eyes broke just enough for her to see something underneath it. Obsession. Fear. A need he had no language for. Now you are the reason I'm going to burn down every path that leads to you. Emma should have been frightened by that sentence. Part of her was. But another part, The part that had spent her life being overlooked, unwanted, and left to carry everything alone, felt seen so sharply it hurt. Before she could answer, Vincent's phone rang. He listened for 3 seconds, then went completely still. "What happened?" Emma asked. He lowered the phone slowly. "Adrian disappeared from my building 20 minutes ago." Her breath caught. Vincent looked toward the hospital direction, then back at her. "And Noah's surgery has just been moved up to tonight." Noah's surgery being moved to tonight did not feel like a medical decision. It felt like a countdown. Emma sat in the back of Vincent Blackwell's car with her hands locked around her mother's handkerchief, watching the city smear past in wet streaks of neon and darkness. Vincent sat beside her, speaking in clipped sentences through the phone, his voice low enough not to frighten her, sharp enough to make powerful men obey. "Private surgical team. Separate entrance. Clear the hallway. No names on the board." Every word made Emma's fear heavier, because she realized this was not a man reacting anymore. This was a man building a wall around everything she loved. "You can't move Noah like he's part of your business," she said. Vincent ended the call and turned to her. In the passing streetlights, his face looked carved from shadow. "I'm moving him because Adrian knows the hospital." "And after that?" she asked. "Do we just disappear into your world?" His eyes held hers. "Only until I know where the knife is coming from." Emma hated the way her heart stumbled at that. Not because of the danger, but because he said it like any threat near her was a personal insult. The car entered the underground level of a private medical wing attached to an old stone mansion outside the city. Rain struck the roof above them like fingers tapping on glass. Inside, everything was white corridors, quiet machines, guarded doors, and soft emergency lights. Noah was already being brought in through another entrance, pale and asleep beneath a gray blanket. Emma rushed to him, taking his cold hand in hers. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here." Vincent stayed several steps behind her, silent, unreadable, letting her have the space she had demanded. But when a nurse Emma did not recognize reached for Noah's chart, Vincent's hand came down over the folder first. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Identification. The nurse froze. One of Vincent's guards checked her badge, then shook his head once. The woman turned to run, but 2 guards blocked the corridor before she reached the elevator. Emma's blood went cold. Vincent looked at her, and for the first time she understood exactly how close danger had been standing to her brother's bed. "You knew," she breathed. "I suspected," Vincent said. "There's a difference." Noah was taken into surgery minutes later. The doors closed, leaving Emma in a waiting room with rain-dark windows and a clock that sounded too loud. Vincent stood near the exit, not sitting, not resting, one hand in his pocket, his eyes on every reflection in the glass. Emma watched him for a long time. "You said my mother saved your life," she said quietly. "You never said what happened after." Vincent did not answer at first. Then he walked to the window, his reflection dark beside hers. "After she saved me, my father found out." Emma's throat tightened. "Your father?" He believed mercy made people weak. Vincent's voice was controlled, but something beneath it was not. "Catherine Collins hid me for one night. That was enough for my family's enemies to notice her. Enough for my father to decide she knew too much." Emma's hand closed around the edge of a chair. "Are you saying your family had something to do with my mother's death?" Vincent turned to her, and the silence between them became unbearable. "I'm saying I was 17, half dead, and too powerless to stop what came after." Tears burned Emma's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "And you waited until now to tell me?" "I have spent 12 years trying to find who gave the order," he said. "Tonight, Adrian wanted you to believe it was me." The waiting room doors opened before Emma could speak. A surgeon stepped out, mask lowered, expression tired but calm. Noah made it through. Emma's knees almost failed. Relief hit her so violently that Vincent moved forward on instinct, then stopped himself before touching her. That restraint broke something in her more than comfort would have. Hours later, after Noah was transferred to a secure room inside Vincent's mansion, Emma stood outside the bedroom Vincent had prepared for her. There were fresh clothes folded on a chair, medicine for Noah arranged neatly by the bedside, and a small brass key placed in her palm. "This door doesn't lock from the outside," Vincent said. "You can leave whenever you want." Emma looked down at the key, then at him. "You locked the first door. To keep danger out." His voice dropped. "Not to keep you in." For a moment, Neither of them moved. The most dangerous man in the city stood before her like a fortress, trying to learn how not to become a cage. Then, from the room behind them, Noah stirred awake and whispered one word that made Vincent's face go still. Blackwell. Emma turned sharply. Noah's eyes opened, unfocused but terrified. Mom said if anything happened to her, he breathed. Run from the man named Blackwell. The name Blackwell did not echo through the hallway. It swallowed it. Emma stood frozen beside Noah's bed, the brass key still cold in her palm, while Vincent remained at the threshold as if the single word had drawn an invisible line between them. Noah's eyes were half open, feverish from surgery, but terror had sharpened them enough to find Vincent in the doorway. Mom said run, he whispered again. If he ever finds us. Emma's chest tightened until breathing hurt. She looked at Vincent, waiting for denial, anger, anything that would make this simple. But Vincent Blackwell did not defend himself. He only looked at Noah with a stillness so controlled it felt like punishment. I was not the man she meant, he said quietly. Emma turned toward him. Then who was? Vincent's eyes moved to hers, and for the first time since she had met him, the dangerous calm on his face looked almost cracked. My father. The room seemed to tilt. Rain tapped against the mansion windows, soft and steady, while the machines beside Noah's bed pulsed in small green lines. Emma remembered her mother's gentle hands, the lavender soap, the late nights, the way she used to check the locks twice before sleeping. She had always thought grief made her mother careful. Now she wondered if fear had been living in their apartment long before death arrived. Your father was Blackwell too, Emma said. Vincent gave a slow nod. Dominic Blackwell. He built the family name before I inherited it. Inherited? Her voice sharpened. Like a house? Like a watch? Like all the damage he left behind. He accepted every word without flinching. That made her angrier. My mother told Noah to run from your name, and you brought us into your home. Because this is the only place Adrian cannot reach without exposing himself. And I'm supposed to believe you? Vincent's gaze dropped to the key in her hand. No, the answer stunned her into silence. He stepped back from the doorway, giving her a path past him. You are supposed to choose what you believe. I told you the door does not lock from the outside. Emma hated that he meant it. She hated that the hallway behind him was open, that no guard blocked her, that the most powerful man in the city was refusing to make the one decision she almost wanted taken from her. Noah's hand tightened weakly around hers. He breathed. Don't go with him. She bent toward her brother, brushing damp hair from his forehead. I'm not going anywhere without you. Vincent looked away, and in that small movement Emma saw something he had been hiding worse than danger, guilt. Not the convenient kind men used to sound human, but the kind that had followed him for 12 years and learned his name. Before she could speak, a phone rang from the hallway. One of Vincent's guards answered, then went pale. Vincent turned. What is it? The guard swallowed. The Eastgate camera just went dark. Every light in the corridor flickered once. Then the mansion's security alarm pulsed red across the walls, slow and silent, painting Vincent's face in flashes of blood-colored light. Emma's body went cold. Vincent moved toward Noah's door instantly, not entering, not touching her, only placing himself between the room and the hallway. Get behind me, he said. Emma looked at the open door, the key in her hand, her brother trembling on the bed, and the man her mother had once feared by name. Then the intercom crackled overhead. Adrian Vale's voice filled the mansion, smooth and patient. Vincent, you should have told her the rest. Emma's heart stopped. Vincent's eyes darkened. Adrian laughed softly through the speakers. Tell Emma who signed the order the night her mother died. Adrian Vale's voice hung in the red-lit hallway like smoke. Tell Emma who signed the order the night her mother died. Emma felt Noah's fingers tighten weakly around hers, and for one terrible second, every sound in the mansion disappeared. The alarm, the rain, the distant footsteps of Vincent's guards moving through the corridors. There was only Vincent standing at the door, broad shoulders rigid, face half-shadowed by the pulsing emergency lights. He did not look confused. That was the part that hurt first. He looked as if he had been waiting 12 years for this sentence to find him. Emma's voice came out quiet. What is he talking about? Vincent turned his head slowly toward her. The coldness in his eyes was still there, but beneath it lived something rawer than fear. Emma. No. She stepped back from him, one hand still holding Noah's. Don't say my name like you're trying to make this softer. The intercom crackled again, Adrian's laugh low and patient. She deserves the truth, Vincent. She has been so brave for you. So loyal already. Tell her why Catherine Collins died after saving your life. Vincent's jaw tightened. Adrian is inside the West Wing, he said to the guard beside him. Cut the speakers. But the speakers did not cut. Instead, every screen mounted along the corridor flickered on at once. Security monitors, wall panels, even the small tablet beside Noah's medicine tray lit up with a scanned document. Emma saw the Blackwell crest first, then the date, 12 years ago, then her mother's name, Catherine Collins. Her stomach dropped before her eyes reached the signature at the bottom. Vincent Blackwell. The room seemed to move under her feet. Noah whispered her name, but Emma barely heard him. She looked at Vincent, waiting for him to deny it now, to say it was forged, to say anything fast enough to stop the wound from opening. He said nothing. That silence cut deeper than the document. You signed it, she breathed. Vincent's voice was rough when he answered. I was 17. That is not an answer. My father put papers in front of me after I came home from the hospital. Business transfers. Protection orders. Names I did not understand. His eyes never left hers. I signed because I was weak, drugged, and trained to obey him. Emma laughed once, broken and disbelieving. And my mother died because you obeyed. The words struck him visibly, but he accepted them. He did not move closer. He did not ask her to forgive him. Yes, he said. The honesty was unbearable. Emma's eyes burned, but she refused to cry in front of him. Then why protect us now? Guilt. Vincent looked at Noah, then back at her. At first, yes. His voice lowered. Then I saw you in that room, standing in front of men who wanted you small, and you were not small. I saw your mother's courage living in you. After that, it stopped being guilt. Emma's breath shook. Don't. It became choice, he said. And then it became the one thing I could not lose. The hallway lights flickered again. A guard rushed in, tense. Boss, the West Wing is empty. Adrian left something in your study. Vincent's eyes darkened. Emma should have stayed beside Noah. She should have refused to follow him anywhere. But the document was still glowing on every screen, and somewhere inside her grief, she needed the rest of the truth more than she needed safety. Show me, she said. Vincent hesitated. Emma, show me. They moved through the mansion together, not touching, separated by everything her mother had died not knowing. In Vincent's study, rain blurred the windows and the fireplace burned low. On his black desk lay a single file, tied with pale blue thread, the same color as the letter on her mother's handkerchief. Emma opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph of Catherine Collins holding a newborn Noah, and behind it, a second document. This one was not signed by Vincent. It was signed by Dominic Blackwell and witnessed by Adrian Vale. At the bottom, one line was circled in red. If the nurse has children, leave one alive. Emma went cold. Before she could speak, Vincent's phone rang. A video call opened by itself. Adrian smiled from the screen, standing beside an old hospital archive room. Now she knows why Noah survived, he said. But does she know what her mother hid inside him? Adrian's smile on the phone screen was too calm, too satisfied, as if he had been waiting 12 years not to attack Vincent Blackwell's house, but to open Emma's heart and place a knife inside the truth. Emma stood beside Vincent's desk with the file spread open beneath her trembling hands, the red-circled sentence burning into her vision. If the nurse has children, leave one alive. Noah was not spared by mercy. He had been preserved for a reason. Vincent's voice went dangerously quiet. What did Catherine hide? Adrian tilted his head on the screen. Behind him, rows of old hospital archive shelves stretched into fluorescent darkness. You really never knew? Vincent said nothing, but his silence turned the room colder. Adrian laughed softly. Your father searched her apartment, her locker, her bank account, even the chapel where she used to pray. He found nothing, because Catherine Collins understood men like Dominic Blackwell. She knew they would tear apart everything she owned. Emma's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Don't say my mother's name like you respected her. Adrian's eyes shifted to her, and his smile sharpened. I did respect her. That was why I told Dominic to keep one child alive. Vincent moved half a step forward, his entire body becoming a warning. Careful, careful, Adrian repeated. You signed the first order, Vincent. I witnessed the second. Dominic carried out the rest. We all serve the same throne. Emma looked at Vincent, but he did not look away from the screen. His guilt was no longer hidden. It stood between them, ugly and honest. Yet when Adrian tried to turn it into a weapon, Vincent absorbed it without defending himself. Tell us what she hid, Emma said, her voice low. Adrian's gaze glittered. A ledger. Names, accounts, payments, protection routes, every judge, officer, doctor, and councilman Dominic bought. Enough to bury the Blackwell Empire and everyone who fed from it. Emma's breath caught. Where is it? Adrian leaned closer to the camera. Inside Noah. The room seemed to collapse around those two words. Emma went cold from scalp to fingertips. No, Vincent's jaw clenched. Explain. Not metal. Not poison. Not some crude little device. Adrian's voice became almost amused. Catherine was smarter than that. Noah was a baby when she hid the access key. She knew no one would suspect a sick child's medical file. Every surgery, every scan, every hospital transfer, one copied code, disguised as a genetic marker node, repeated across 12 years of records. The ledger opens only when the sequence is assembled from Noah Collins's medical history. Emma remembered every appointment her mother had insisted on keeping, every folder she had protected, every time she told Emma never to throw away Noah's hospital papers. Her grief shifted into awe so sharp it hurt. Catherine Collins had not only died afraid. She had died fighting. Vincent turned to one of his men. Secure every record tied to Noah. Now. Adrian's smile faded for the first time. Too late. I have the archive. I only need the latest surgical report, and your private wing just created it for me. Emma realized it then. The moved-up surgery. The fake nurse. The pressure. Adrian had never only wanted her. He had wanted Noah's final medical file. Vincent realized it at the same moment. His face went still in a way that made every guard in the room step back. You used her brother's surgery to complete the key. I used your weakness, Adrian said. You protected her exactly as I knew you would. Emma's heart pounded, but beneath the fear, something steadier rose. She picked up Vincent's phone from the desk and looked directly at the screen. You made one mistake. Adrian blinked. And what is that? You thought I would stay the girl who accidentally opened the wrong door. Vincent turned toward her, surprised. Emma held Adrian's gaze. My mother taught me to keep copies. Adrian's smile vanished. Emma reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her mother's handkerchief. With shaking hands, she unfolded the pale cloth and revealed the tiny stitched pattern around the letter C. Not decoration, but numbers hidden in blue thread, row after row, disguised as embroidery. Vincent stared at it. Emma. Her voice broke, but she did not lower it. Noah was never the only key. Adrian's face hardened on the screen. Bring me that handkerchief, Vincent, or I burn the archive and take the boy's future with it. For one breath, the room waited for Vincent Blackwell to choose power, revenge, or control. Instead, he looked only at Emma. No, he said quietly. This time she chooses. Emma looked down at the handkerchief, then at the open door behind her, then at the man who could lock every exit in the city but had placed the choice in her hands. And for the first time, she stepped toward the danger by herself. Emma had spent most of her life believing courage meant surviving quietly, paying bills quietly, crying in hospital stairwells quietly, loving Noah quietly enough that the world would not notice how much he mattered. But standing in Vincent Blackwell's study with her mother's handkerchief open in her hands, she understood something Catherine Collins must have understood before she died. Quiet survival was not the same as surrender. Adrian Vale wanted her frightened. He wanted her obedient. He wanted Vincent desperate enough to trade her freedom for a ledger. Emma looked at the phone screen, at the old archive room behind Adrian, at the shelves full of records he believed he controlled. Then she folded the handkerchief once, slowly, keeping her eyes on him. You don't get it, she said. Adrian's face hardened. Careful, Emma. No. I think I'm done being careful for men who built their power on other people's fear. Vincent stood beside her, silent but alert, every part of him ready to step between her and danger. But he did not interrupt. He had said she would choose. And for once, the most dangerous man in the room was keeping his word. Adrian leaned closer to the camera. Your brother's future is in that archive. Emma's voice shook, but it did not break. My brother's future is not yours to threaten. She turned to Vincent. Can you trace the call? One of his men answered before he did. Almost. Adrian smiled again. You think I called without protection? Vincent's eyes stayed on Emma. He wants us looking at the archive. Emma understood instantly. The archive was another wrong door. Another path arranged for her. Another place they were meant to rush toward while the real danger moved elsewhere. She looked down at the stitched numbers on the handkerchief, then remembered Noah waking from surgery, whispering the name Blackwell like a curse planted in him by fear. Noah, she breathed. Vincent was already moving. Locked down his room. A guard's voice came through the radio, strained. Boss, the cameras on the medical floor just looped. The air vanished from the study. Emma ran before anyone could stop her. Vincent was beside her in seconds, not grabbing her, not slowing her, only matching her pace through the red-lit hallway. The mansion felt endless, all dark wood, rain-streaked windows, and silent alarms flashing across framed portraits of men who had destroyed lives from behind closed doors. When they reached the medical wing, Noah's door was open. The bed was empty. Emma made a sound she did not recognize as her own. Vincent caught the doorframe, his face turning terrifyingly blank. On Noah's pillow lay a white hospital wristband and a small black phone. It rang once. Vincent answered without speaking. Adrian's voice came through, softer now. She chose well. That's why I took the boy. Emma stepped toward the phone, every part of her shaking. Where is he? Where this began, Adrian said. The Grand Aurelia? Same floor. Same door. Bring the handkerchief, Emma. Come alone, or Noah learns why your mother should have let Vincent die in the rain. The call ended. The room blurred around her. For one moment, Emma felt the old instinct rise, the urge to collapse, to beg someone stronger to save what she loved. Then she looked at Vincent. His eyes were cold with fury, but beneath it was something that made her chest ache. Fear. Not for himself. For her. I'm going, she said. Vincent's voice was low. Not alone. Emma held the handkerchief against her heart. He asked for the girl who opened the wrong door. She looked toward the storm outside, toward the city that had swallowed her mother's truth for 12 years. So this time, I'm going to open it on purpose.